Sly 2 Band of Thieves is one of the few games ever made and ever played that I would give a 10 out of 10 to without any hesitation. Back when sequels really did evolve from their predecessors, Sucker Punch came out swinging with perhaps the greatest direct video game sequel ever made. Or at least that's how I've always felt about it, considering that it's my personal favorite game from when I was growing up. Like a lot of players, I actually began with Sly 2 in the series exactly 20 years ago this Christmas. Knowing nothing about the first game, just taking a look at the box art enchanted me. The exquisite art style, cel-shaded to perfection, sending a signal that I must explore this universe and become a member of the heists to follow. It's easily one of the most beautiful games ever made, and so is the cover, from the front to the back. Enigmatic in its bold presentation, showing the heroes in exalted status, righteously presiding above Sly's silhouette against the iconic Paris backdrop. The perfect introduction level to a game if there ever was one. This is a game that wastes no time getting down to it. Immediately, the charm radiates in everything from the always expressive character models and their stylized iconography to the smooth voiceovers and greasy sweet jazz music. The gameplay is rooted in the fundamental simplicity of platforming, yet amplified to complexity by the eccentric synthesis of stealth operations, spy gadgets, and 3 unique playable characters whose dynamic styles evolve the generational formula into a true action-adventure sandbox. Its best attributes, like those belonging to any system, are the ones that work together, but its individual components are also some of the best ever done in the medium, elements that remain pristine all these years later. The gameplay is the highlight, as it should be, complemented by the intricate narrative saga of its namesake characters. Sly sprung from an era when video games were made confidently and were marketed based on the appeal of their protagonist, for which they were named after. Games were made out of nothing more than pure necessity of creative voltage, needing an outlet. Sly Cooper is a game that is never afraid to be clever, to be cinematic, but one that never forgets that it's a game. A lot of people want to say things, but art is about showing more than telling, and that goes double for a game. Promoted on the strength of the anthropomorphic characters and their chemistry, painted distinctly like a cartoon and christened with a name that stirs the imagination in all manners of deviousness, Sly Cooper stands out uniquely among platformers in games of the PS2 Golden Era. As developer Chris Zimmerman says,
"You can't just have great art, you can't just have great code, you can't just have great characters, you gotta have it all."
It's not about just how the game looks, it's about how the game plays and how the player experiences it.
You've gotta have it all, and Sly 2 does. There's just something in the way that Sly moves, his kinetic aesthetic flowing through every frame and motion as he saunters and sneaks through the 8 distinct worlds that were made just for him and the band to play in. The distinct rhythm of the gameplay satisfies in everything from skulking tiptoes around threats accentuated by the cartoon sound effects to the thwack of objects and enemies from slicing blows of the cane. Consider the comic book-inspired graphics whenever you knock out an enemy, and the animations personalized for every signature move. There's even dynamic melee combos and special stealth attacks that can be chained together in groups of enemies big and small. As I said in my Sly 1 retrospective, just hitting things in a platformer like this is pure dopamine, and almost everything in these levels can be broken open to the tune of loot to buy upgrades with, and the rest of it going to the vault. It's a game with so much personality because that's what the developers had too. The substance is in the style. Primarily a stealth game, the mechanics therein are not just a gimmick, but an excuse for brilliant world design and gameplay variety. The stealth is used as a tool to create immersive puzzles and to add a layer of role-play and energy on top of what would usually be a straightforward genre. It gives us the impression that the level design is organic and that only a master thief could traverse it. The faint glimmer of particle effects indicates what you can interact with when you get close, and seemingly anything can be used as a means of transport in this game. Sly uses his textbook knowledge of thieving to scale broken pathways piece by piece, swing across gaping expanses, and delicately perch atop minuscule geometric points with a degree of precise and snappy movement that is lost on games like Astrobot today. It's not just about sneaking, but planning routes accordingly for efficiency, and through exploration having possibilities emerge naturally as a consequence of the environmental design. One of the first games to have multiple playable characters, and maybe the first to do this idea well. Each self-contained hub level is a sandbox to be explored at the leisure of the player according to their chosen methods. Sly being the main character, the bulk of the platforming centers around his skill set. But as you unlock new techniques from the story progression, more opportunities present themselves for Bentley and Murray, and they gradually become more than just sidekicks to Sly. Sly is all about going unnoticed, but the game is very clever in the resources it grants you to incorporate the deviously thievious methods. Bentley is small and weak, relying on his technology prowess, measuring his approaches from a distance and handling most encounters indirectly and surgically. Murray is just raw power and has no problem brute forcing his way through problems, but even he is equipped with abilities good for stealth by the fact that he can attack from above and finish foes in split seconds before backup can arrive. Having this much variety on hand contributes to a sandbox feel, especially given that you can choose the order of the jobs you take on for the story progression. Each job is tailored to the skill sets of the character that accepts them, but as the story advances, the jobs become more elaborate, often requiring the trio to conspire together to pull off the big steal. Like any great game, the ideas are ever changing in Sly 2, from the menial prep work to pickpocketing and infiltrations, brawling in the streets, and the exciting shoot-'em-up minigames. Sly Cooper has a wealth of ideas that work together in concert, and if some of the jobs ever teeter on the edge of being repetitive, consider that even James Bond had to do reconnaissance out in the field. The true replay value comes from the return to explore the 8 hub worlds and experiment with all you've unlocked through the 100% completion. Especially for the mind of a child, Sly becomes a sandbox that stays fun for hours after the story is over and you've seen everything. But like anything in life, sometimes you need a break to go outside. For me, it's the world design that keeps me interested. Every level has a different theme, location, color gradient, and tone that makes Sly's globe-trotting universe feel so rich. Popping the clue bottles and making off with booby-trapped treasures are added luxuries that give Sly 2's worlds a feeling of importance. Prowling around and relieving the many thugs and goons of their pocket change right under their noses makes me feel like a real thief. And the euphoric feeling as the music tempo rises and the instruments blare through the streets as you run off into the night to evade capture is pure ambience. Perhaps no other game save Persona 5 can have this level of atmosphere in its worlds or music this memorable. From the hypnotic opening shot of the Paris nightlife to the lush and spicy Indian juggles, the treacherous medieval castle cities of Prague to the open-air solitude of northern Canada, and the mad genius of Arpeggio's Air Fortress, it's a sightseeing invitational to stop crime worldwide, as the Cooper legacy grows with every exploit. And how amazing the exploits are. The heists and their set pieces always feel rewarding to revisit, like the iconic ballroom dance diversion and the great train robbery, that to me was just as impressive as the train sequence in Uncharted 2 that everyone overhypes. Sly 2 is a game where the numbers matter, and with the quantity there is always quality. You have 8 unique worlds and 3 distinct playable characters with 3 contrasting personalities and truly unique play styles, making it an ambitious concept that Sly pulled off an entire decade before GTA 5 would come along and try it on a larger scale. But somehow it feels more personal here, more natural. Every episode in the Sly anthology features an elaborate setup for a grand heist to rip off a criminal mastermind and set things straight. Sly's concept pays homage to the trope of the gentleman thief that only steals for the right reasons. And if he ever steals for fun, it's with a sense of humor and manners, like when he breaks into a museum to part ways with a rare stamp, only to mail it on a postcard back to Inspector Fox for the jokes. But the main story of Sly Cooper is anything but unserious. It's actually one of the most mature and layered narratives in all of gaming, One of the most intelligent stories was told in a game made for children, ensuring that anyone that played it at a young age would have a free IQ boost so they could grow up to get that 3.95 GPA like Bentley.
3.95 GPA, sucker!
It's an intelligent story for audiences of any ages, a story where there are real stakes, consequences to every action, even when the heroes have the best of intentions. And the heroes here are not perfect. They learn to lose, a lot. The ending is a Pyrrhic victory with a slight glimmer of hope, referenced by the final trophy being labeled a victory, but at what cost? If Sly 1 was about revenge, Sly 2 is about responsibility and the sobering reality that every plan has a drawback, and crime doesn't always pay, even when it's for the right reasons. Sly and the gang may look like they're having fun, but their agenda is really about self-preservation and the use of integrity and perseverance to not let the old family foe become someone else's problem. Sly's narration is my favorite from any game. On the surface, he's as cool as a cucumber, but deep down, Sly is human. He's self-righteous and determined to defend his lineage even at the expense of putting his own life on the line. He has doubts. What he could not be prepared for were the sacrifices of others for that goal. It's an inspiring performance from Kevin Miller and the other great voice actors, back when voice acting was goofy but fun, like how Alicia Glidewell masterfully does an entire scene in 2 accents, having an argument with herself as both the antsy Inspector Carmelita Fox and the ice-cold, quadruple agent Constable Neela. As complex as the heroes are in their narrative of personal growth from game to game, the villains are equally as intriguing and layered. Dimitri was a frustrated artist that wants to flaunt his fraudulent riches to gain the respect he never earned. He's basically the epitome of all modern celebrity and a good look into the future of what the internet has turned people into. Influencers that are famous for influencing nothing. Rajan similarly grew up poor but had a wealth of street smarts, getting into drug smuggling for the express purpose of generating a facade of sophistication and strength. I love it how he projects his own weakness and insecurity, like Dimitri, onto others, and in his showdown with Murray gets his rightful comeuppance as Murray defends his honor. The Contessa shows us how academic intellect can inflate one's ego and how institutional corruption in the name of helping others can be the most insidious form of cruelty and manipulation. Her storylines highlight the prison industrial complex, reminding us of the much-needed reforms that we need along those lines. It's here that the writers are able to sneak in some commentary of their own without the story ever feeling preachy or having a hidden agenda. There's always some humor to balance these things out, like Jean Besson's satire of the Canadian healthcare system.
Oh, my back's killing me. Thank Jiminy for the Canadian healthcare system.
But this is a serious story at heart that takes unexpected risks all the way through, and for that it's admirable and memorable. I love how Neela is one of the most unassuming villains in any video game. The rare female antagonist is crooked and as formidable as any man. She's almost as smooth as Sly in how she plays everyone for suckers with her cunning, and she plays the audience for fools too. And so does Arpeggio, even if he's blinded by his own avarice and is incapable of seeing how his own protege could outwit him. It goes to show how great of a character Bentley is in all of these games, that he never lets his smarts go to his own head. I wish that they would have shown us a bit more of Arpeggio because he's so compelling, but they make his little screen time that he has worthwhile. It makes sense for Neela to take center stage as the true final boss, given that she's been one step ahead of us for almost the entire game. It's brilliant to set her up as the common threat for both Carmelita and the boys, so that they can unite together in the end to destroy their mutual enemies once and for all. And Clockwork, being one of the all-time great villains, is more of a dreadful psychological terror than physical existential threat. But looming in physical reincarnation, he's the ultimate menace and the very symbol of hatred. But Sly Cooper is a series about love, made by people that love it as much as the fans do. At a time when video games were ever-changing, developers put everything into their projects, not expecting the future to be guaranteed the way that cushy cash flows do today. Sly 2 doesn't have the standard Hollywood ending where everything gets tied up in a nice, neat little bow. It's better than that, and games are better than that, at least in the 21st century. But even when Sly and the gang are down on their luck, they keep their heads held high and that signature smirk on display. Being cool is about keeping up appearances, but being authentic is always being able to perform in the worst of situations.
What could possibly go wrong?
A lot can go wrong when making a game, but with developers this passionate, they had to go right. 20 years later, it's an honor among this group of thieves that we get to play Sly again, and for me personally, it's an honor to finally do a real review of the game. Everything about it holds up well today, even if it's not the game that I want to play all the time, but no game is endlessly replayable if all you do is play it 24/7. It's then a great thing to revisit your favorites every 10, 15, and 20 years, to revisit your childhood enjoyment as an adult, to get a slightly new perspective on things. What I've found is that the classics will always be the classics. It's a stark contrast from 20 years ago when the games industry was bursting with brilliant ideas, that now we're lucky to get a single good game per year. With the lack of PlayStation 5 games, Sony smartened up and re-released their bona fide sellers. And it's okay for me because I'd rather play the certified good games and do retrospectives on my channel. It makes you wonder how games like Sly 2 could have been made in under 2 years from scratch, and how Sly 3 could be made in under a single year with such originality and quality in all aspects of design, when nowadays bad games take up years to make and play. I can't explain it. But all I know is that Sly 2 is the finest game ever played from the year 2004. Thank you very much, Sucker Punch.
To
You're
make
the
it
wizards.
appeal to the European gaming market. Raccoons, squirrels, turtles. Sly Cooper 2 is the finest game you'll ever play this year.
Carmelita's just as angry as ever. She's really quite lovely when she's angry. That Constable Mila,